Hi, and welcome to another One Moment Happiness video. As I've said before, I only have to do them for one moment, and that one moment can make all the difference in improving my mood and enhancing my outlook. But the wonderful thing about momentum is that we can overshoot the mark and do them for a lot longer than a moment. So I thought, why not do one? Whether or not I post it on YouTube is another story, while I'm walking back to my car, which is charging at the local supermarket. I've walked and visited a friend, and now I'm off to my job for the day. And let's just kind of, you might want to do it along with me, let's just kind of notice if there's any predictions as to how good today can be. Let's say if we cast our thoughts, let's say, 8 hours in the future. What can we expect of those 8 hours? What would be reasonable to expect that those 8 hours could provide to us? And would it look a lot like the last 8 hours we spent? And here's what I'm getting at. Could something really, really good happen? Like life-changingly good? Can we allow ourselves to open up to that as being possible, plausible? And what about inevitable? What is inevitable to us right now? What feels inevitable? You might have a to-do list, places you're going to visit, things you're going to do. Well, I'll have to get to sleep by 10 p.m. and I've got a doctor's appointment, and I've got to get the car tuned up. So there's this kind of to-do list that goes on in one's mind. Would this to-do list exist in the ideal world? Maybe not. Maybe you'd have somebody else doing these things for you. Maybe in your ideal world, you wouldn't have to go to the doctors because there may be nothing wrong with you. Maybe in your ideal world, you would be staying up all night long, not just having to go to bed at 10. Could be that there's a contrast between what you're planning on doing and what ideally you'd be doing. Although, is your ideal world big enough to include these things so that, yes, you could do them in your ideal world? Could you go to that doctor's appointment and everything that doctor's appointment would say to you and mean to you? And let's just contrast for a second. It might mean that there's something wrong with you, right? That you're vulnerable, that you're human, that you're capable of breaking down. How could it be that this very doctor's appointment, if indeed you were to go to one, could mean that you were exquisite, excellent, a specimen of awesomeness? Could it mean that? Could you allow, regardless of the outcome, or perhaps because of the outcome, as to what would be happening at the doctor's office, what they'd tell you, what they'd remind you of, could all that be welcome in your ideal life? So that whatever happens in this next 8 hours could all mean to you that you're wonderful, that you're capable, that you're talented, that you're intelligent, that you're powerful, that people love you big time, and the people you want to love you, especially, that it's a quality love, it's high quality love. Just notice that which you're predicting to happen. So for me, I'm going to be picking someone up who is considered developmentally disabled, and there is a company that works with developmentally disabled people as a physical intermediary and would pay caregivers like me to take care of them. Now, that could be predicated on there being something wrong with this person. And also, because I don't have a job that's paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or something like that, I could take it as if there's something wrong with me for being involved in this job. I mean, I think it's reasonable that a large number of people might see a job and also see my friend who I'm taking care of as being signs of a problem. And could every worst aspect of this job, his behavioral and developmentally disabled situation, his behavioral problems, could they serve a wonderful, wonderful reality? Could they be emblematic of that reality being real? Could they be emblematic that I'm a multimillionaire? That they signify that they mean that? And my first impulse would be to say no. Could I take care of him while being super successful with great connections, great friends? Maybe I have multiple businesses. They're all bringing me in multiple millions of dollars. And I still take my friend out once or twice a week, make the amount of money I do, and observe him, so that in the context of me making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, I see my friend, he does everything that he does, he talks the way he does, he says the same things he says, and they signify, just as anything will remind you of something that occurred simultaneously, neurons that fire together, wire together, I think it is. So that one, through simple association, the simple coincidence of two things, would make one remind you of another. So on a personal level, anything can be symbolic of or reminiscent of something else. A great example is our wedding song, the song we dance to at our wedding. Or a song from youth. It brings back memories. Now, it's not technically connected, except that you may have heard it during that time, and so it'll bring back those memories. So this is kind of where I'm getting at. Can any problem in your life, by being introduced to a wonderful, ideal reality, a solution, such as telling about the worst thing that ever happened to you on, let's say, a late night talk show. You're being interviewed by this famous host, and they are asking you about the worst thing that ever happened to you, and you're able to talk about it, and you're able to tell your story about the worst thing that ever happened to you in a way where the audience sympathizes with you, maybe laughs at your funny way of telling the story. Look back and laugh. Another associative mental maneuver. We look back on a very troublesome time and we laugh, right? It's creating a new connection of laughter to that problem. So you're telling this late night talk show host who is praising you, regaling you with praise about all the accomplishments you've made, and you get to tell this person about the worst thing that ever happened to you in your whole life. And the audience is on your side, and they're bathing you with admiration, adulation, applause. They love you. They're so glad that when you come out on stage, in fact, they give you a standing ovation. And within this gigantic bath of love, you're able to associate the worst thing that ever happened in your life and get some sort of love connection to it so that it's more palatable. And think of other examples, other contexts, things that you might like to experience. I mean, that's something I'd like to experience, that I'd be famous, I'd be illustrious, I'd have made it in the world in, kind of conventional ways that one does. And I'd be able to talk about the times that I was homeless and I was selling my paintings on either Venice Beach or in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And in some grand way, it was part of the myth of being a starving artist that I thought was a really great one. It was something wonderfully self-sacrificial about it, wonderfully inspired about the art making, and I could talk, having fully succeeded at it, having my paintings in museums and in great galleries throughout the world, that I could talk about the lean years and maybe even look back upon them with a sort of self-envy where I wish I could go back to those lean years because, you know, having gotten through the trials and tribulations that they had represented during that time, and being here, having survived and being successful, I can look back upon those years as the years of hunger, of drive, of having my life ahead of me, my success ahead of me, and having something to look forward to. And I can look back on that with a sort of craving. To be hungry can be a wonderful thing. Yes. So could I, with my developmentally disabled friend, could I, with those things about him that have bothered me so often, be reminded that I am a wealthy, resourceful, intelligent, beloved, celebrated person, and that I would so thoroughly bathe my experience of him with all kinds of reminders of my success, of reminders of my greatness, that he himself could be symbolic of that, reminiscent of that, associative of that. That's tremendous. If I can keep going down to that part of him that has irked me the most, that has bothered me or depressed me the most, and I keep searching for only that one little thing, the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, it almost is like that when I actually touch that worst thing, it's like touching the tip of an icicle, that malevolent icicle that could fall on your head and brain you. But you touch the tip of it, that tiny part, the worst, the point of greatest sharpness and dangerousness in a sense, where all the force of that icicle is concentrated. When you touch the tip, it melts. It melts just by focusing one's attention, one's loving awareness on the worst of 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 the experience. You get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it becomes more and more and more manageable as you train your gigantic microscope onto it. And then when you finally encounter it, it is gone. And that's another thing I would love for these videos to continue to do for me, because it works. I feel it working. I hope it works for you too.